The alien station of Vornek 7 was hot, noisy, and full of trouble. Creatures from all across the galaxy came here, traders, smugglers, warriors, and sometimes fools. A human named Sergeant Jake Harlan walked into the alien tavern. He wore a simple black jacket, dusty boots, and a calm face. His eyes were sharp, and his steps were quiet. But even quiet men can bring storms. Humans were not popular here. Many aliens saw them as weak, soft, or boring. But Jake didn't care. He had been through wars. He had seen death. Words could not hurt him. At the corner of the bar, a tall alien woman watched him. She was covered in light blue armor, with glowing tattoos across her arms. Her name was Shiraka. She belonged to the Threxian noble class, a proud warrior race that hated being challenged. She laughed loudly and pointed at Jake. "Look, another Earth creature trying to act brave," she said, slapping her tail against the floor. Jake didn't even glance her way. He ordered a drink and sat at a quiet table. Shiraka didn't like being ignored. She walked over, tall and proud. Her long dark braids swung behind her like whips. Around her, her friends giggled, waiting for a show. She leaned close to Jake. "What's the matter, human?" Too scared to speak. Jake looked up, his voice cool. "I speak when needed," she grinned. "Oh? Maybe I should help you feel welcome." Then she did something bold. She poked his shoulder hard with her sharp metal nail. Jake stared at her finger. "You should stop," he said. But she didn't. She poked again, this time on his neck. "What will you do, human? Complain? Cry?" Jake didn't move. He didn't blink. He just looked into her eyes. "Last warning," he said softly. "The aliens." Around them laughed. One even shouted, "By her back, human." "Show her." Shiraka raised an eyebrow and leaned even closer. "Oh? You gonna bite me?" She teased, sticking her finger right near his lips. Then it happened. Fast. Clean. Shocking. Jake opened his mouth and bit her finger, not to break the bone, but enough to make a point. Shiraka gasped and pulled her hand back. A small line of green blood appeared on her skin. The bar fell silent. You could hear glasses stop mid-air. A coin dropped. No one breathed. Shiraka stared at Jake, eyes wide, her mouth half open. Jake stood slowly. His voice was steady. "You touched me without permission. I gave you a warning. Now we're even." She clenched her jaw. You bit me? Do you know who I am?" Jake nodded. "Someone who doesn't understand boundaries," she growled. "I am Shiraka of House Talzora, daughter of Warlord Kareth. I could have your head for this." Jake didn't flinch. "Then send him. I don't fear proud names." Gasps filled the air. Some aliens backed away. No one had ever spoken to Shiraka like that. Her face changed. Anger, confusion, and something else. Maybe even curiosity. Jake picked up his drink, calm as ever, and walked out of the tavern. Shiraka stood frozen. Her fingers still stung. But what burned more was her pride. No male had ever challenged her like that, not even from her own race, and definitely not a human. Outside, Jake walked through the busy station halls. Behind him, whispers followed. "Did you see what he did? He bit Shiraka. He's a dead man." But Jake didn't look back. He had seen warlords, beasts, and worse. Shiraka was just loud. Still, deep down, he knew this wasn't over. That bite didn't just hurt her finger. It wounded her ego. And egos like hers always came back for revenge. Jake smiled quietly to himself. Let her come. He was ready. The blood on her finger was dry now, but Shiraka's pride still burned fresh. Inside the stone halls of House Talzora, Warlord Kareth crushed a steel cup in his hand when he heard the news. "A human bit my daughter?" His voice echoed like thunder across the chamber. Guards stood frozen. Servants lowered their heads. Shiraka sat on the ground, holding her bitten finger like a trophy. Not once in her life had anyone touched her like that, not even during battles. Yet that man, that human, had stared into her eyes and bit her without fear. Strangely, she couldn't stop thinking about it. "I demand a duel," she said, rising to her feet. "He insulted our honor. He must pay." Kareth's eyes narrowed. "You wish me to crush him?" She shook her head. "No, I want to crush him myself." Meanwhile, Jake stood alone outside the repair docks. He looked up at the twin suns. His jaw ached a little, not from biting her, but from the weight of what he knew was coming. He had bitten a noble, not just any alien. A warrior princess. He might as well have slapped a king. Suddenly, a message pinned on the come screen behind him. Big red letters. "Formal duel request. House tells Zora." Jake blinked once. He tapped accept. A mechanic nearby gasped. "You're gonna die, human." Jake shrugged. "Everyone dies. Might as well do it standing." Later that night, a crowd filled the Circle of Honor, a stone ring with fire pillars around it. This was where warriors fought for pride. Not to kill, but to prove who was stronger in spirit and skill. Jake walked into the circle wearing simple clothes, no armor, no weapons. Only tape around his fists. Shiraka stepped in from the other side, covered in sleek silver armor. Her braid was tied high, her claws sharpened, and her eyes locked on him. The crowd roared. "He's crazy. A human can't beat her. Poor fool's gonna get torn apart." Jake didn't care. He just looked at her, calm as ever. Shiraka stepped forward. "Why did you bite me?" Jake answered, "Because you didn't listen." She smirked. "Then listen now, human. I will break you in front of everyone." The war horn blew. The duel began. Shiraka rushed first, fast and deadly. Jake ducked, rolled, and dodged with perfect timing. He didn't attack. He just moved like water, flowing through her swings. The crowd went silent. This wasn't luck. Jake was trained, deeply trained. He waited, studied. Then, just as Shiraka launched a spinning strike, Jake stepped in, tapped her shoulder with 2 fingers, and stepped back. Laughter erupted. Not from her fans, but from neutral watchers. He wasn't just surviving. He was embarrassing her. Shiraka roared. She struck faster, harder. But Jake was already ahead of her moves. Finally, she screamed and leapt straight at him with both blades. Jake spun aside, caught her arm midair, and flipped her on her back. Boom. Dust flew up. Her armor cracked a little. Jake stood over her, breathing slow. Shiraka stared up, stunned. He could have ended it. But instead, he walked away. The war horn blew again. Match. Human victory. No one clapped. Everyone was too shocked. Guards looked to Kareth. He didn't move. He just stared at Jake with cold, calculating eyes. Jake walked off the circle without saying a word. Behind him, Shiraka slowly sat up. Her face was unreadable. She touched the ground where he stood. For the first time in her life, she felt defeated, but strangely, not angry. Something inside her had shifted, something she didn't understand yet. Shiraka stood in front of a tall mirror, still in her cracked armor from the duel. Her hand moved slowly over the dent in her chest plate, the place where Jake's hand had landed. He had touched her only once during the fight. But that one move ended it all. And he had walked away without hurting her, without celebrating, without mocking. Just walked away. She hated that feeling in her chest. Not pain. Not rage. It was something else. Why didn't he finish me? She whispered to herself. Behind her, the door creaked. Her father, Warlord Kareth, stepped inside, his massive frame casting a shadow across the floor. "You lost," he said coldly. "I didn't lose," she replied. "I learned." Kareth raised an eyebrow. "Strange words for my daughter." She turned toward him. "I want to challenge him again." "You already did," he grunted. "You were defeated. You will carry that shame. Shiraka shook her head. Not a duel, a challenge of honor and purpose. If he wins again, he becomes more than a warrior. Kareth laughed. What, you want him to join our house? No, she said, eyes burning. I want him to become my equal. The warlord's smile faded asterisk across the station. Jake sat inside a quiet chamber, eating dried fruit and cleaning a small knife. He had won the duel, but he knew it wasn't really over. There was always another test. He heard a knock. A young alien servant entered, bowing. You have been summoned to the High Court, the boy said, by Warlord Kareth himself. Jake nodded, wiped his hands, and stood. The High Court was built from black stone, with banners of warlords hanging. From the ceiling, alien nobles filled the seats, curious, whispering. Jake stood alone in the center. Kareth's voice echoed. Human, you won the duel. You showed restraint, skill, control. Many believe you should be honored. Jake said nothing. But, the warlord continued, some believe you should prove yourself further. He looked toward Shiraka, who now stood beside the throne. She stepped forward. I challenge you, Jake Harlan, she said, loud and clear. Not in war, but in duty. Jake raised an eyebrow. Duty? You will protect me for 7 days. No weapons, no guards, just you and me. In the wild lands beyond the border. If I survive without harm, I will call you my equal before my people. The court murmured. Jake looked around, then met her eyes. Why would I protect someone who tried to hurt me? Shiraka replied, because only a true warrior guards even those who once stood against him. A long silence. Then Jake gave a single nod. Challenge accepted. That night, while the court buzzed with rumors, Shiraka stood alone on her balcony, staring at the stars. She didn't understand what she was doing, but she knew one thing: this human had changed something in her. He didn't treat her like royalty, or a monster, or a trophy. He treated her like someone real. And now she wanted to see who he really was. In the wild, where titles meant nothing. Far below, Jake packed a small bag, tied his boots, and looked at a photo tucked inside his jacket. It was a picture of a young girl, his sister back on Earth. He whispered, You always said I'd get into trouble. Huh. He smiled faintly. Trouble had a name now, and it was Shiraka. Asterisk. The gates of the alien city closed behind him with a loud clang. No guards, no cameras, no backup. Just Jake and Shiraka, walking side by side into the wild lands of Grathkar. A rocky jungle filled with deadly beasts and ancient machines left behind by long-forgotten empires. The sky above was orange. 2 moons floated high. Strange birds screamed in the distance. Jake walked calmly, checking his map. Shiraka stayed silent, but she kept glancing at him. This human wasn't like others. He didn't look afraid. He didn't ask questions. He didn't even try to impress her. He just existed. And somehow, it made her feel more watched than ever. 3 hours into the jungle, Jake stopped. We'll camp here, he said. There's no cave, no high ground, Shiraka replied. Jake knelt, digging at the dirt. Exactly. Which means predators avoid this patch. They like cliffs or tunnels. Shiraka frowned. This wasn't luck. He understood survival better than most of her own warriors. As Jake began setting up a heat shelter, Shiraka asked, Where did you learn these things? He paused. Earth wasn't always peaceful. She waited. He said nothing more. Shiraka sat beside a rock. You don't talk much, do you? Jake looked up. Words are easy, actions matter. She looked away, hiding the small smile creeping onto her lips. By night, the air turned cold. Alien insects glowed in the bushes. Strange sounds echoed around them. Shiraka couldn't sleep. She opened her eyes to find Jake still awake, sharpening a stick. You don't sleep either? She asked. Not when I'm responsible for someone, he replied. You mean me? Her voice was sharp. Jake looked at her. That's the challenge, isn't it? She didn't answer. But inside, something twisted in her chest. He wasn't protecting her out of duty. He was protecting her because it was simply who he was. Suddenly, the bushes or USTLED. Jake stood in one smooth motion. Stay. Lo! A creature burst out from the shadows, long claws, red eyes, and metal fangs. A hybrid from the old war machines. It roared, charging at them. Jake didn't run. Instead, he picked up the stick he sharpened earlier and threw it straight into the beast's eye. It screamed and thrashed. She leapt in with her bare hands and slammed it against a tree. Together, they fought like a team. Perfect rhythm, no shouting, no confusion. When the beast finally fell, they stood over its broken body, panting. For a moment, they locked eyes. Then Shiraka spoke in a soft voice. Why didn't you leave me behind? Jake shrugged. Because I don't leave people behind. Not even arrogant ones. She blinked, caught off guard. You think I'm arrogant? She asked. I know you are, Jake said, smiling slightly. But you're brave too. The next morning, Shiraka sat by the fire, lost in thought. All her life power came from fear, from showing no weakness. But Jake showed strength by not trying to dominate her. He didn't need to prove anything. That made her feel something she didn't expect. Respect. Maybe more than that. Later that day, Jake led her into a valley where strange plants grew in patterns. He looked around, tense. Something's off, he whispered. Too late. The ground beneath them exploded. A trap. Shiraka screamed as she fell into a deep hole. Jake grabbed her hand barely. She dangled over a pit of spikes, dust rising. Jake's arm shook. Let me go. She shouted, You'll fall too. Shut up, he growled. I don't let go. With a yell, he pulled her up, both of them crashing to the ground above. Shiraka lay beside him, breathing hard. She turned her face toward him. You risked your life, she whispered. Jake opened one eye. You already said that yesterday. No, she said softly. I said you protected me. This time, you saved me. As the sun set, Shiraka looked at Jake differently, not like a rival, not like a challenge, but like something rare. Someone she didn't know she needed. Asterisk. The fire crackled softly as the two sat in silence. For the first time in her life, Shiraka didn't know what to say. She had faced beasts, raiders, assassins, even fought her own cousins for rank. But sitting next to this calm, quiet human made her feel like a storm was turning inside her chest. Jake stared at the stars, his back resting against a rock. His breathing was steady, like he had no fear. No doubt, he had pulled her from a death trap just hours ago. And now, he acted like it was no big deal. You always act like nothing matters, she said finally. Jake didn't look at her. Everything matters. I just don't show it. Shiraka frowned. Is that a human thing? Jake glanced at her now. No, that's a soldier thing. She nodded slowly. That made sense. I used to think humans were weak, she said, her voice lower now. Soft, small. Jake smirked. We are small, but we bite hard. That made her laugh, really laugh, not a fake noble's laugh. It echoed through the trees like music from another world. The next day, they crossed the jagged cliffs of Tharn's Spine, a dangerous path with narrow ledges and strong winds. One wrong step meant falling 100 meters into razor rocks. Jake led the way. Shiraka followed closely but quietly. She watched how he moved, careful, patient, always scanning ahead. He wasn't fast, he wasn't flashy, but he was always in control. Halfway through, Shiraka stumbled. She didn't scream, didn't cry, but her foot slipped, and she grabbed the edge of the cliff. Jake didn't even hesitate. He dropped to one knee and caught her arm, pulling her back up again. You're making this a habit, he said, breathing hard. Shiraka stared at him. Why do you always save me? Jake gave her a serious look. Because I'm responsible. Until this challenge ends, your life is mine. She blinked. The words struck her like a blade, not because they sounded cruel, but because they felt honest. No games. No pride. Just truth. And that truth felt warmer than she expected. That evening, after they found shelter in an abandoned outpost, Shiraka sat beside him while he cleaned a long wound on his arm. She watched his hands move strong, careful, steady. She hesitated, then reached out and helped him tie the bandage. Jake paused but didn't stop her. For a while, they said nothing. Then Shiraka whispered, "Do humans ever feel lonely?" Jake looked at her surprised. "All the time," he replied. "Even in crowds, even in war." She nodded. "Phyrexians don't talk about those things. Weakness must be buried. Pain must be hidden." Jake leaned back. "That's not strength. That's fear wearing armor." Shiraka looked away. Those words hit too deep. Maybe she had been wearing armor her whole life. Not just on her body, but around her heart. That night, she had a dream. Not of war, not of thrones, but of a quiet garden, with her and Jake sitting together, laughing. She woke up sweating. What was happening to her? The next morning, something strange happened. She let Jake walk ahead. She didn't demand a lead. She didn't race past him. She just followed by choice, for a Phyrexian noble. That was unheard of, but she didn't care anymore. Power wasn't about walking in front. It was about knowing who would stand beside you when everything fell apart. And Jake had proven that again and again. Later that day, as they rested under a rock shelf, Shiraka turned to him and said something that shocked even herself. "If you asked, I might stay on Earth." Jake blinked. "What?" She looked down, a little flustered. "Forget it." Jake smiled gently. "No, I heard you." They sat in silence again, but this time the silence felt soft. Not cold. A quiet kind of peace. The kind you only find after walking through fire with someone. It started with silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the wrong kind. The kind that meant something was missing. No birds. No wind. No bugs buzzing in the trees. Jake opened one eye. Something wasn't right. He sat up fast, his hand moving for a knife that wasn't there. He had agreed no weapons, but instincts were hard to silence. Beside him, Shiraka still slept, one hand resting on her blade-shaped tail. Her face looked calm. Softer than before. Jake didn't want to wake her, but something was coming. And it wasn't nature. Far away, hidden behind a ridge, 3 alien figures watched the campsite with glowing red optics. Mercenaries. Paid killers. Sent by someone in house. Single quotes Zora. Not to test Jake, but to eliminate him. Orders are clear, one of them said. Kill the human. Make the noble girl disappear. No noise, another replied. They'll blame the beasts. And like shadows they moved through the rocks. Back at the campsite, Jake finally shook Shiraka's shoulder. Wake up, now. She groaned. Is it morning already? No, he said. It's something else. Just then, a small rock hit the dirt near his foot. Jake grabbed it, smelled it, and his eyes narrowed. Dust poison. Someone's near. That woke her. Up fast. She stood and sniffed the air. I smell it too. Metal and rot. Assassins, Jake said. Her eyes widened. From my family? Looks like they don't want you coming back with me alive. Shiraka's heart twisted. She had expected danger, but not betrayal. Without weapons, they had only their fists, their instincts, and each other. Jake led her through the trees, stepping lightly, never breaking a twig. Shiraka followed, her royal armor silent for once. Suddenly, a dart flew past her head. Jake spun and tackled her behind a tree. They're here, he whispered. Shiraka's eyes burned. Then we fight, Jake nodded. Together. The first assassin leapt from above, holding twin plasma knives. Jake dodged low and kicked his leg, sending him crashing into a tree. Shiraka pounced on him, striking his chest with her armored elbow. Crunch of bone and sparks, but there were more. Two more moved in fast, one grabbing Jake from behind. Shiraka roared and threw a rock the size of a helmet, knocking the attacker off. Jake flipped him over and slammed his fist into the alien's jaw. Blood sprayed. Still, one assassin remained, and this one had something dangerous. A pulse bomb, small, silent, but deadly. Down! Jake shouted. The bomb hit a rock and exploded in white flash. Shiraka screamed as part of her armor lit up in sparks. Jake dragged her behind cover. Her arm was burned. Not deep, but bad. He tore part of his shirt and wrapped it quickly. "Can you move?" he asked. She nodded. "I've had worse." But Jake saw the pain in her eyes. He had seen that same look on Earth soldiers, pretending they were fine, so they wouldn't be left behind. He wouldn't leave her. Ever. Together, they cornered the last assassin near the cliff edge. Jake fought him hand to hand while Shiraka limped behind. The assassin was faster, but Jake was smarter. He let the alien come too close, then used his own speed against him, spinning and throwing the killer off balance. The assassin fell right off the cliff. Gone. After the fight, Shiraka sat, breathing hard, holding her arm. "You saved me again," she said. Jake looked at her. "We save each other now." She gave a small smile, but deep down, she was angry, not at Jake but at her own people. Her family had tried to erase her. They didn't want her changed. They didn't want her free, but it was too late. She was already different. And Jake had become something more than just a challenger. He was her anchor. That night, Jake stayed close while she rested. He kept watch, eyes sharp, hands ready. In the quiet, Shiraka whispered, "When this is over, what happens to us?" Jake didn't answer right away. Finally he said, "That depends on you." Her eyes stayed open long after that. She didn't know where this road led. But for the first time in her life, she wanted to find out. They returned in silence, not because there was nothing to say, but because everything had changed. Jake and Shiraka walked side by side through the gates of Vornak 7, covered in dirt, bruises, and dried blood. No royal escort. No cheering crowd. Only whispers. The crowd had heard assassin set after the human, and the noble warrior who bled to protect him. It wasn't just a mission anymore. It was a story now, spreading fast across stations, cities, and even stars. A human and a proud alien noble. Once enemies, now something more. Inside the war court, Warlord Kareth sat on his throne, fists clenched, jaw tight. His daughter had returned, alive. But changed. She stood taller, not from pride, but purpose. Jake stood beside her, eyes calm as always. "I heard you were attacked," Kareth said coldly. Jake didn't blink. 3 assassins, masked, silent, used poison and bombs. Shiraka stepped forward. "They were sent by someone inside our own house." The warlord's face twitched. "You dare accuse our blood?" He growled. "I accuse those who fear change," Shiraka replied. "I left proud. I return wiser." Kareth stood. "And what of him? What is he to you now?" Shiraka turned and looked at Jake. She didn't hesitate. "He is my equal." Gasps filled the hall. Kareth stared at them for a long time. Then he laughed, but it wasn't joy. It was disbelief. "You call this weak, soft creature your equal?" Jake stepped forward now. "I don't want your throne," he said. "I don't want your gold." "Then what do you want, human?" Kareth asked. Jake looked at Shiraka. "I want her trust. Nothing more." That silenced everyone, because in a world built on power, trust was the rarest treasure of all. Later, in the high garden above the court, Jake sat on a bench made of crystal. The stars above shimmered like silver dust. Shiraka walked up quietly, holding 2 cups of warm blue tea. "I don't usually share this drink," she said, handing one to him. Jake smiled. "I must be special then." She sat beside him. The garden was quiet, peaceful. I was raised to conquer, Shiraka said softly. To fight, to lead, Jake nodded. And now? She took a slow sip. Now I think. Leading without love is just another kind of war. Jake looked at her, thoughtful. You changed. She glanced at him. Because of you, Jake chuckled. No, you changed because you let yourself feel. Shiraka reached into her pocket and pulled something small, a silver ring with a symbol of two blades crossing. She placed it in Jake's hand. It's Threxian, she said. Worn by those we trust with our lives. Jake turned it over in his palm. Then he did something bold. He took her hand gently and kissed the very spot where he had once bitten her. Shiraka froze, eyes wide. Then she smiled. You bite less hard now. Jake grinned. I only bite when needed. They both laughed. The next day, before Jake left for Earth, Shiraka met him at the landing pad. She wore no armor, no crown, just a simple robe. Are you leaving for good? She asked. I don't know, he said. But if you ever come to Earth, I'll show you the quiet places. The kind where no one pokes anyone. She stepped close. I might poke you again someday, she whispered. Jake leaned closer. Then I might just bite again. They stared at each other. Then, slowly, her forehead touched his. A warrior's way of saying goodbye. Or maybe something more. As Jake's ship lifted off, Shiraka stood on the balcony, watching. She didn't feel sad. She felt strong. Because she wasn't alone anymore. She had met someone who didn't try to tame her. Someone who stood beside her without needing to stand above her. And that was power. Real power.